Join the Israel Vision team in a three-part series for a comprehensive look at what the top echelon of the Israeli government is saying. Israel Vision reports to you from the second annual Herzliya Conference on the balance of national strength and security for Israel. The overall topic at this year's conference was Israel in battle and in the international arena. The Herzliya Conference, hosted by the Interdisciplinary Center, focuses this year on the political and military struggle in which Israel finds itself in light of the major changes that have occurred in the Middle East, Central Asia, and in the USA. The conference brings together Israel's decision-making leadership, senior figures from the realms of foreign and security policy, economics, government, and top Israeli academics. In this program, Part 1, you'll meet former Prime Ministers of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu and Ehud Barak. These leaders speak openly about their own experience of leading the country and some of the problems they encountered, and how they see the future in light of the September 11th attacks on America.
אני חושב שהאירועים שהתרחשו בארצות הברית
I think that the events that occurred in the United States, and of course the actions the United States took after them, are changing international reality in a very clear and unequivocal fashion in favor of Israel. It's interesting that immediately after the acts of mass destruction became public, all kinds of people came out of their holes in the Arab world. The accusations that the Israeli Mossad did it. We are familiar with these fantasies. It came from the knowledge that many in the Arab world realized that the world opinion was changing in Israel's favor. The reason is not so much the September 11th event itself, but rather the response of the United States to those events. What characterizes terror are two things. Firstly, the real root of terror lays in the totalitarian mentality. This mentality says that whatever my goal is, be it political, religious, or ideological, I am free of any moral restriction in order to gain that goal, in order to achieve that goal. This is what is behind totalitarianism. Everything goes. The end justifies any means whatsoever. In order to do this, I can blow up a school bus, or a skyscraper, or a city, or an entire country if I want to. The totalitarian perception is the root poison, and it's not coincidence, because totalitarianism and terror go hand in hand. Modern terrorism is an outgrowth of the Bolshevik approach, and we know that other totalitarian regimes, such as Nazism, and the phenomena that we see here in front of us, by which they justify any means to reach their end. President Bush very clearly said to the Taliban,
surrender terrorism or surrender power. You don't surrender terrorism, you're out of power.
And now they're working systematically on Al-Qaeda.
אני חייב לומר שהתפיסה הזאת עומדת
I must say before I go on that this approach will remove a distant but very significant threat to our existence, Iraq. Although Condoleezza Rice and the U.S. have not yet decided about Iraq, I will permit myself to say that they will decide. They'll decide because the combination of a regime with a terrorist past and with a terrorist orientation is intolerable for our world. 60 years ago, we saw how a totalitarian and terrorist mentality almost led to the destruction of the human race. Fortunately, of course, the Nazis were destroyed in time. Yet, there are still demons about, and these demons are no less dangerous than Nazism. And if they get atomic arms, there's no doubt that the future of human civilization and humanity itself will be in danger. The United States will have to act. In the atomic, chemical, and biological age that we're in, there's no way out for the leader. We must make the reasonable assumption that, while under siege, even final siege, Saddam Hussein will use us as his preferred target, as he's always done in the past. The first national priority must be to prepare the population for unconventional attack, defense for the population, and make sure that we're ready for any possible response on the part of Iraq to an American attack in the future. In my opinion, it won't be far off. The question is, however, what are the three principles of moral clarity, strategic clarity, and security, and how do they apply to us? I think that as far as moral clarity is concerned, we can respond to ourselves and certainly to our critics that every time we take action, it's only out of the simplest need to protect ourselves. Exactly what the U.S. is doing to protect itself. Moreover, since nothing can justify terror, we can tell all our critics, whether they are from the European Union or certain parts of the American administration, we can give them Bush's speech and say, look here, I think this moral clarity is extremely important. The strategic clarity demands from us that we do something that I have been supporting for many years and which I believe in. I think that in recent weeks, the United States has moved in this direction. In other words, to begin to pose a threat to the regime. I like to use the analogy of the kamikaze pilots. You want to hurt them, but you know that until you don't attack the aircraft carriers from where they take off, anything else will be fruitless. Either you deter them or you drown them. And the same goes for this regime.
לפגוע, כלומר להרתיע, או להטביע, אם יש צורך, כלומר החלפת המשטר. אני חושב שהיום
I think that today, in order to deter in light of what's happened so far, we have no choice one way or another but to bring about the collapse of this regime. Let's say he makes a real tactical break in terrorism. What can we conclude from this? Will we get involved in peace processes with him again? If we don't topple his regime, the message that he will understand is that he can, in fact, from time to time, revert to his ideology and to his methods, both of which are unacceptable. The fact that the Palestinians will pay the price in hundreds of victims, he doesn't give a damn about that. What he really cares about is his regime.
זה שהפלסטינים ישלמו מחיר במאות קורבנות, זה חשוב לו כקליפת השום. המחיר שמעניין אותו באמת.
I think the chance for peace will be attained only if a future Palestinian leadership knows that when you make peace with us, you don't violate that peace. When you decide to go by the way of peace, you don't use terror to improve your tactical position. When you shake hands, it's binding. And when you break it, there's a price to pay. And the price must be the regime. Conceptually thinking, we have to put aside the thought that if only we solve the political problems with the Palestinians, the sky will open up and manna from heaven will fall on us. This is not the case, because the solution will be complicated and it won't be instantaneous. It can only be harmonious if there is a democratization of the Arab world. We hope and wish that this will happen one day, but any other solution will have to be based on deterrence and on the strength of Israel. One thing I know for sure is we're already in a country that is much stronger than what anybody ever thought, and we have a lot of internal unity, much more so than our enemies believe, and even more than we ourselves believed. Some of us at least. When I look back at last year and I look ahead at the years to come, I can say that I'm full of hope. Thank you very much.
September 11th was a turning point, and nothing will ever be the same. The collapse of the Twin Towers and the attacks on the Pentagon and all the other plans that were not implemented have created a new reality in which nothing is inconceivable. The unthinkable doesn't exist anymore.
Unthinkable or inconceivable.
If terrorists can disperse plutonium dust and contaminate an entire city, they will not hesitate. If they have the capability to do so, they will. If terrorists like bin Laden can cause the death of not 3,500 people, but rather 350,000 people, they will not hesitate. This new reality has far-reaching implications, which we are now facing. Here in Israel, we have for years been arguing that we are suffering because the world simply does not understand the strength and the depth of the problem of terrorism. It doesn't make sense that the entire world is mobilizing to operate against terrorism, and yet it seems that at the beginning of the road, the world can still find a winding, tortuous way to argue that the situation will operate against Israel. Israel will have to coordinate everything that it does with the Americans, especially wherever Iran and Iraq are concerned.
The
last point that I wanted to point to in this context is that the free world will prevail. We are now 60 years after the attack on Pearl Harbor. It reminds me of the famous story of General Yamamoto, who in the evening after the attack on Pearl Harbor was not in a celebrating mood like the rest of Japan. He was depressed. People asked him why he was depressed. His response was, "This morning we woke a giant, and we're going to pay the price." The real mistake that bin Laden and all these gangs made is that they estimated that they could stir this giant, the United States, and the free world, and not be forced to pay a price. I fear that there will be retaliation and more terror attacks. Many more innocent people will die, but the free world will eventually win the struggle. Our struggle with the Palestinians for a year and a half, and in a sense for the past 10 years, has been in the center of our national agenda. I think that at this point we need a three-legged strategy. The first leg is a determined fight against terrorism, generally in line with what the current Israeli government and the IDF have been doing in the last few weeks. Interceptions of Hamas and Islamic Jihad operatives that are operating from within the Palestinian Authority are being carried out. Needless to say, it's very hard work. It's unpleasant and it causes strife. But this strategy requires two more legs in order for the strategy to be practical and realistic. The second leg will be a plan for unilateral partition, initiated partition between us and the Palestinians that will be implemented gradually over a 4-year period. We are here and they are there. When the time comes and the conditions are ripe, nobody knows whether it will take 5, 15, or 25 years. Will it be possible to live again as neighbors? I don't know. The third and final leg is no less important than the first two. The third leg is an open door, a big open door the size of the wall for the renewal of negotiations without any preconditions apart from the entire absence of violence based on the principles of Camp David. What are the main principles, I ask, that have led us to need this strategy? Between the Jordan River and the sea here behind us, 10 million people are living. 6.5 million Israelis, 3.5 million Palestinians, without partition and without separation. If this continues for much longer, we will be in a country that is either non-democratic or non-Jewish. If the Arabs can express their collective political desires, then this will be a bi-national country, and if they cannot express their political, national, collective desires, then we shall be in an apartheid country. Without a partition, without a separation, we will be on our way to a scenario that is similar to what is going on in Bosnia or in Belfast. There we see two communities that live one within the other, bleeding for generations, or a scenario that is similar to what happened in South Africa during apartheid. In our case, we're known for our special talents, and we may find ourselves facing these two scenarios at the same time. Only a border, an Israel border, that will guarantee a solid Jewish majority for generations to come can guarantee the future of Israel in line with the Zionist vision for Israel as a Jewish democracy. The demographic reasoning and sheltering of our identity makes it imperative for us to separate. It is an existential need for Israel to have this kind of partition. No wishful thinking, no ideology, and certainly no political maneuvers or demagogy will be able to shake this concept. Obviously, it would be better to reach this partition or separation by agreement. But an agreement takes two. You know the truth, as painful as it may be, is that Arafat is not a partner for decision-making nor for agreements. I've been following Arafat for 20 years, not only in the year and a half that I was prime minister and since. I personally believe that he will never be such a partner. Arafat is 73 years old, and he will never change. Anyone who says anything else, even in good faith, is deluding himself. In Camp David and after Camp David until the last elections, Arafat was shown to be a person that recognizes the fact that Israel exists, but that's meaningless because we know we exist and we're strong enough to protect ourselves. He does not recognize Israel's ethical right to exist as the country of the Jewish people. I'm going to even tell you something worse. We found that he recognizes the existence of a Jewish faith, a Jewish religion. It's mentioned in various forms of the Quran, a fact that's hard to deny in our world. However, he does not recognize in the deepest sense the existence of a Jewish people, of a Jewish nation. When Arafat is speaking of a vision of two countries west of the Jordan River, he's talking about one Palestinian and about another democracy that will be at first binational, taking advantage of democracy. Later on in the second stage, there will be a Muslim majority in that country, even if it will take a long time. That will happen as a result of demographics and as a result of our blindness that will prevent us or prohibit us from implementing partition. I think we should part ways as soon as possible.
במובן הזה שלמה בן עמי שהיה שר החוץ בממשלתי.
In this sense, Shlomo Ben Ami, who was foreign minister in my government and did a very good job, he was on the mark when he identified as a statesman and as a historian the attributes of Mr. Arafat's personality. It's true that in Camp David we stripped Arafat naked, so to speak. We've shown him for who and what he really is, and that's one of the reasons that we have such national unity today. It wasn't a trick. This was a bona fide, genuine attempt to walk the distance. We were willing to talk about anything to clarify once and for all and make sure whether there is a partner for dialogue, a reasonable partner for dialogue, with whom we could sign agreements while still upholding our vital interests. To conclude the picture where Arafat is concerned, I would like to tell a joke that a senior American from the previous administration told me. It goes, the head of the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli Prime Minister meet in order to discuss negotiations for a permanent agreement. They decided that before they started the negotiations, each one would tell a story. So the Israeli Prime Minister goes first. He says, you know, Moses brought the people of Israel out of Egypt. 40 days and 40 nights later, the Israelites were thinking about the good food that they had left behind. The conditions were tough. They wanted water in order to bathe, in order to drink, etc. Moses went to the rock, hits the rock, and a pond was created. Everybody bathed, drank. When everybody was finished, Moses went into the lake, bathed, drank, went out. He then noticed that his clothes were gone, so he asked, who stole my clothes? And all the Israelites answered him as one, the Palestinians stole them. The chairman of the Palestinian Authority banged on the table and said, that's impossible. So the prime minister asked him why. Because, said the chairman, it can't be, there were no Palestinians back then. Then the prime minister smiles and says, now we can start talking. The fact that we do not have a partner for peace is not supposed to paralyze Israel and prevent us from operating in order to uphold our vital interests. Instead, at this time, we should create maximum and optimal understanding for us in the international arena. Israel has to guarantee its security, the security of its citizens. It has to guarantee its national identity, and it has to clarify to the world that it is intent on ending our control over another people as soon as possible. Of course, one would think, why not enter interim agreements? I believe that after what we saw in Arafat, and based on our acquaintance with him, entering interim agreements today, substantial interim agreements that hand over assets to the Palestinians, and change the reality without us knowing where he's headed, or rather, when we now know what he really thinks, any exchange would be very irresponsible. Entering interim agreements that would be superficial or meaningless, and that would only transfer land or other assets just in order to win a little bit of quiet time, would be the same as turning a blind eye and ignoring reality because we only have limited resources. Yitzhak Rabin, at the beginning of the peace process, was able to say, let's give him various things. Maybe a metamorphosis will occur, but now we're at a more advanced stage, and continuing to hand over assets could be very irresponsible. My administration forced Arafat to show his true face, not through a trick, but in an attempt to sign a peace agreement with him. As a result, our public is far more unified. From now on, both sides of Israeli public and political life, from right and left, will have to come down to earth and to see reality. The left now realizes that we're not in the Midwest, we're in the Middle East, and that it is a difficult neighborhood. Our neighbors are not that nice, as Golda used to say, not as nice as we wanted to believe. The right believed in the dream of a greater land of Israel, but now it realizes that it is not a realistic political reality, no matter how glorious it sounds. I think that now we are far more mature and willing to deal with reality. Under these conditions, when you get up in the morning, it still doesn't look that great. But be sure, as I am sure, that in the end it will be good.